What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel Anime Fiction. I am back with another What If. What if Naruto was teleported to another world, part 2. And if you like this video, please like for the next part. And if you're new in my channel, like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for more crossover fictions. Now let's begin this new video.
Chapter 3. Things Called Guilds. I am Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. Hello Naruto. I'm Erza. Naruto had a confused look on his face as he looked around for anything he might recognize. He felt uncomfortable in Erza's lap, so he tried to get up, but when he did, he shivered and fell onto his side from lack of energy. "Oh. Are you okay?" Erza asked worriedly when she saw him fall. He didn't answer her and tried several times to get on his knees, but she couldn't. He finally found some stability in his knees before clutching his head in pain. He moaned, "Where am I?" "I already told you, you're in the tower." Erza answered as she tried to get him to look at her. "Well, what is it?" She snapped, "I don't know what you mean by tower." "It is the place that is said to deliver this world to sanctuary. The Tower of Heaven." The children looked at the old man sitting to the side. It was a tall white-haired man who sat in a criss-cross position as he looked at the boy with a questioning look. Naruto looked again at the doubtful old man as he didn't recognize who he was. Until now, he had only met one elderly person in his entire life, and Danzo hadn't made a good impression on the group. "And who are you supposed to be, grandfather?" Naruto said with a hint of disgust addressed to the slave. Rob looked into the boy's eyes, seeing the anger and fear a person his age should never feel. And their gazes lasted several moments. Until Naruto was pushed peever. Naruto fell beside him, looking at the girl pushing him. She had an annoyed expression on her face and looked at the blonde. "Don't be mean to Rob G-san. He's really nice." She pointed at the boy. "Sorry." "And no," said Naruto as he finally stood up while looking at the girl. "He was looking at me weird and didn't say anything. I was." "Excuse me," Erza said as she started slapping him. The boy began to recoil from the girl's surprisingly strong blows. Then he ran off in a circle as the girl chased after him, yelling at him to apologize. Rob stared in amazement and then gave a small laugh at their antics. The boy finally gave in to the girl's wishes, sitting down opposite the older one. He looked directly at the man and then looked to the side. The boy struggled with the right words. "I'm sorry, G-san," he said, and then turned to look at the red-headed girl in her approval. She had her arms crossed, nodding with a smile. Rob looked at the young man and then had a sweet expression on his face. "I'm sorry if I offended you, young man." "Was he interested only in who you are?" he said as he tried to touch the young man's shoulder, but saw the boy wince. "What's wrong?" The boy looked a little scared, not trusting the man in front of him. "Sorry. It's just that I don't normally have people apologizing to me. And when they touch me, they usually just hit me," he said to the old man, who had just acquired an extremely dark face. "Did what? Why did they hit you?" Rob said as he felt the anger building rapidly inside him. Although Rob didn't know this boy, he couldn't understand the idea that a child should be beaten at such a young age. "I do not know," Naruto said as he looked at the old man. "For as long as I can remember, people have hated me. I don't know why, but they looked at me like I was something else. Something bad." The blonde shivered as he remembered everything that had happened to him. Rob looked at the shocked boy. He wished he could find those men and tell them what he thought. Whatever he did, no child deserved to be hurt by people. "Is that what brought you here?" she wondered as she tried to think about this. "Should I ask? Why are you here?" Erza broke the tension between the two with a questioning look. She felt very uncomfortable on the sidelines. Naruto looked at the girl sitting next to him and at the elders. He tried to think, closing his eyes. "I don't remember." He struggled trying to remember the last thing on her mind. He remembered the masked men gathered around him. He could hear Kakashi yelling in the background, asking to save the boy. Danzo then walked in front of him and passed out. Naruto couldn't remember anything after that. Just then he decided to talk to Kurama. Maybe he had the answer to what was happening. He opened his eyes and found himself in the same sewer he had come to know. He made his way to the cell, ready to talk to the old fox. But he found something strange. In place of the Titanic demon was a huge ball of red chakra. Naruto walked over to the ball and held out his hand. Instantly the ball changed shape, taking the shape of the fox he knew, but without a face. The faceless body leapt forward, nearly crushing the boy, and he stumbled forward. The boy hesitated, but he reached out and touched the body of the chakra. Instantly, memories flooded his head, taking control for several moments. Images of piled up bodies, huge monsters attacking each other and a man in a spiral trying to reach him. And then he saw Kurama, standing there with his body vanishing. He could see that he was talking, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. And then, after a while, it just disappeared. Naruto finally understood why Kurama was like this. Because he didn't talk or react like he used to. This was just a memory. An echo of himself. The body he left behind. Kurama was gone. Naruto's eyes widened. He just let it invade him. The strongest thing he had ever known about him in his life was gone. He could feel an overwhelming sadness wash over him. But no matter how hard he tried, the tears didn't come. Rob and Erza looked at the new boy. They wanted to ask him what was wrong with him, but they realized that something was wrong. Erza reached out to help him, but felt a rough hand on her shoulder. She turned her head to see Rob with a sad look on his face, shaking his head negatively. Rob stepped forward and sat across from the depressed boy. He put his hands on the boy's shoulders to get his attention. The boy looked at the man who had carried him back. He had a rueful smile, showing understanding and compassion for the boy. "I know you probably don't want to tell us, but you should know that we will help you. This place is hell. But we'll be here with you, so rest up for now." The boy nodded in sympathy. He lay down on the ground and curled up, already used to these circumstances. The man looked at the boy I'm worried about, but decided to leave him alone. He turned and walked towards the girl. He smiled at her and stroked her head. "Come on, Erza-chan, it's time to sleep. You will need energy for tomorrow's work." She looked down for a moment, but looked back at the old man and smiled. She lay down on the ground and closed her eyes. The thought of tomorrow's job terrified her. But he silently hoped that the next day the boy would feel better. Images of war flashed into his consciousness. Blood pools in craters and trenches created by devastating attacks. Ninjas of all sizes and ages attacking, decimating each other. And in the center of it all were 8 figures. They started out as small multi-tailed black monsters attacking each other. And then some of them grew to gigantic sizes, turning into monsters that destroyed entire sections of the battlefield. And right in the middle, the giant explosion that knocked them all out. And then, through the blurry vision she still had, he could see figures continuing to attack and defend. Then out of the air came Kurama, standing over him as his hands reached out from his chest. Once again, he slowly faded from her vision, vanishing forever. Naruto woke up to the sound of a loud scream. He felt a bead of cold sweat on his neck from the constant images running through his head all night long. He turned his head in the direction of the scream. From different cells, people were being herded by men dressed in strange clothes, holding batons in their hands. Sometimes lightning shot from the staff, surprising the prisoners. This made people move faster, hoping they didn't get hurt afterwards. He got up when they opened his cell. A man wearing a face mask approached and stood in front of him. The man looked around and saw the new boy standing in front of him with the other 2 to his side. The girl hid behind the tall old man. He returned his attention to the boy. He smiled at the new opportunity to assert herself. "Hello, young man. Welcome to our humble home. You've been asleep for a while, so you probably don't know the rules. So let me educate you." He reached out and slammed the boy to the floor, grunting with strength. The girl had let out a silent scream at his action. "Get up, you little shit. Time to work." He grabbed him cane and unleashed a wave of thunder upon the boy. The boy was shaking with pain from the sudden attack. The attack stopped and the boy tried to get up, but he was pushed back to join the crowd. He moved along with the tall slaves and entered an open cave. He saw people collecting boxes and rocks, placing them on floating platforms and taking them to designated areas. He saw the masked men whip the slow-moving people with a strange glowing whip. He was taken aback by the horrors before him. People tortured and attacked in front of each other. Others make no effort to help each other. I just worked in fear, hoping they would be ignored. While Naruto was there, he was thinking about doing the first run possible. But then he was pushed by one of the jailers onto a work route. He was pushing back until another electric shock shot through his body, making him scream. He watched the rocks and debris crash in front of him. He followed the examples that other men and boys set. He reached out and grabbed the first stone he found and threw it into a growing pile. He kept grabbing the tightly packed rocks and throwing them. Listening to the screams and pains ringing around him, he felt his hands rip and cut at the feel of rough stone. After hours of work, a resounding bell pierced the cave. When Naruto looked around, he saw the rest of the slaves leave. He decided to follow the crowd into the corridors and cells. After a few minutes, he finally got to the cell he had arrived at. He walked slowly into the cell and saw that the old man and the boy had returned. The old man had marks on his neck and dirt all over. He showed that he had done a similar job to him and was also surprised. In front of him was that girl Erza. She was sobbing and had her hands out in front of her. They were covered in cuts and bruises just like hers. Old Rob was holding her hands and hers shone with a strange light. He saw that Erza's hands were healing and regaining color. After a few moments they were settled and she was no longer crying. She smiled at the old man and hugged him around the neck. The old man returning the gesture to the little girl. He released the girl and she went to the corner to play. After a few seconds, Rob turned his head and saw that the new boy was standing by the bars looking at them. He looked down and the boy's hands remained by his side, covered in cuts and blood. He turned and addressed the young man. "I see you worked hard today," he said with a sad look in his eyes. "Come here, I'll fix it for you." The boy looked at the man questioningly, until he felt his hands shaking. He decided to follow the example he had seen and sat down opposite the man. He reached out his hands and the old man took them between his. The strange light covered his hands. "I'm not the best healer now, but I'm good enough to fix a few scratches," he said with a slight smile to the boy. The boy just looked at the man but didn't react to his little joke. Rob's eyes softened and he continued working on the cuts. "I'm sorry you had to go through this on your first day. What the hell is this place?" Naruto looked at the man with a worried look. How can they do such a thing? They are corrupt and wicked men, using people to get what they want. "Hey, I guess everyone is like that," the boy gave a quick dry laugh. The man saw that the light was doing nothing to help the boy. He let go of the boy's hands and saw that almost none of the scratches had disappeared. He looked at the boy with a puzzled look. "It looks like he's not helping you." "I don't understand this." The boy raised his hands to see that the scratches were just disappearing even now. How quickly they disappeared before his arrival was not even an achievable dream. "My wounds have always healed quickly. But now, the chakra can't do anything like it used to." Rob looked at the young man with an expression of surprise printed on his face. His eyes widened in shock at what the boy had just said. Memories of past adventures come to mind. "What did you just say?" The boy looked at the wrinkled man and bowed his head. "I said Kurama's chakra doesn't help. It always helped when he came back from those missions, but it doesn't work." He clenched his hands into fists. "I can't fix myself like this. Not without him." The old man looked at the boy who had disappointment in his eyes. "Who is Kurama?" he questioned the boy. "He used to live here," he pointed to his belly, "but he's gone now." The boy had a lost look in his eyes. Rob decided to rip off his shirt and wrap the boy's hands in it. "I'm sorry, but I can't help your hands. But it will heal over time. I promise." "Why not, G-san? You healed me, right?" Erza said as she approached the two boys. She had wondered what the two of them were talking about as she sat. "Because I've seen it before. I can't help him because he's not from here." Both of their eyes widened in shock at what he'd just said. Rob saw that neither of them understood what he'd said, so he decided to dig deeper. "I've met people like you, who used something called chakra. They were very strong and could fight many people, but when they fought, we couldn't heal them." He stepped back, ran his finger across the dirt and drew something. When he raised his hand there was an image of a spiral with a dot on the edge. "Do you know what this symbol is?" Naruto looked at the image and immediately snapped. "Yes, men in masks have always had this symbol on their heads. They said it was a leaf." "Why?" "Yes, you are from the same place," Rob said with a rueful smile. "You use something called chakra, which is similar to magic but uses different elements to do it. And because of that, I can't use my magic to heal you." "This because?" "Nay, G-san, I don't understand. You told me everyone has magic, right? So why not? Erza asked Rob curiously. Yes, Erza-chan. Everyone here is capable of using magic if they try. But Naruto-kun doesn't have the ability to summon it. Since it comes from a place where people use more than just magic, it is unable to collect eternal know that we need to use magic. And without an origin, he can't use the magic to gather into his body and heal it. He looked up and saw that both of them had big questioning eyes on their faces. Then he remembered that he was talking about boys and he should try to simplify the explanation. There's nothing I can do to heal it with my magic. It has to heal without our help. Naruto stood up to address the old man. But what about Kurama's chakra? Why can't you heal me? I think without Kurama's help, that chakra wouldn't know what to do. It's just a mass of power that can't do anything without something directing it. And without help, it can't heal you like before. Naruto looked down in despair, feeling as if his best edge was gone. He felt two palms on his back and he turned his head and saw Erza smile at him. It's fine. Everything will be fine. Naruto just stared at her blankly and relaxed on the ground, ignoring his breathing. She pouted and prepared to nudge him, but Rob stopped her. He shook his head and motioned for her to go to bed. She was angry at first, but then reluctantly followed his instructions. Rob looked at the sleeping boy and wanted to talk to him, but he knew he had to leave him alone. He positioned himself against the rock wall and fell asleep. Ignoring the sounds around him, he slipped into his memories and dreams. The burly man was in the clearing with his friends, ready to greet travelers. All of them were chatting with those they knew. Rob looked beside him to see Goldmine talking to some of the Anbu. Talking about how they should start taking it easy and being wild. Bob was flirting with the females and giving them a good look. He definitely enjoyed talking to women, though he also flirted with men and gave them a more, well, vigorous look. From the side he saw Yujima and Prolyasika talking to the scientists and Yukiha-san. He was asking what kind of techniques and skills were customized on his side. Yukiha-san was giving him a long explanation of what was possible there. And after a while they started talking about food and cooking ideas. She told him that if they found a way back, she would give him 2 sons the prescriptions he had given him. Finally he looked aside and saw Makarov beside him looking around the clearing with pride. He was so happy that his group had come to connect with the traveling ninja. He still wanted to try flirting with Yukiha-san, but after the first time she decided not to side with him anger. Even Makarov had learned to stay away when he'd been slammed into several trees and bounced off the water with a big splash. Man, that was a fun time pulling it out of the big lake. But now they had to go home. Master Purito was sending messages that they needed to go home, and the Konoha travelers had to move again, or the guards would come back and attack again. So are you sure you have everything you need? We can still give you rations and water. I mean, can you even follow us to Fairy Tail if you want? Makarov said to the tall figure standing next to them. No, I won't force myself on your help and hospitality, he said with a smile to both of them. If we follow you to your home, they can come there and lock you up. Also, until we find a suitable place to return to, I want to look around this beautiful land, see this world for what is possible. Rob and Makarov looked at each other and smiled. Then they tied their arms around his neck and gave him a smile. Well, Hashirama-san, it was fun escaping from the Royal Guard with you. But if that captain finds us, we'll be screwed. We wish you good luck on your journey and on your return home. Thank you Makarov-san, Rob-san. We will never forget the kindness you have shown us these past few days. We will never forget Fairy Tail. Okay, fine, if you need our help, come and see us. Makarov said as he broke away from Hashirama and joined the rest of Fairy Tail to one side. They waved the vanguard group away and hoped for good luck on their travels. Over time they had heard newspaper stories of mysterious people helping civilians in need. A strange justice group that catered to people in desperate need of help. But his group knew instantly that the group were his ninja friends. Listening as that section of the Royal Guard passed through Fury looking for the group with the strange energy. They knew their friends would never be caught or questioned, and that they could keep running. Up to a year after they fired the group, they heard the awful news. It became known as one of the worst military catastrophes in history. The Red Guard had been pursuing the group for several months and had decided that capture was no longer an option. Now, it was a death on sight. Reports said that the captain launched a massive magical attack to kill the insurgents. Most likely it was Abyss Break or Jupiter. It seemed to work, until the attack continued. The attack landed and devastated the small town of Tonwa. The death toll reached more than 400 and the city was wiped off the map. The small group of guards and the captain were considered criminals, with the leader marked as an S-class criminal. They were sought after and feared by most of Fiore's people. But that's what you'd expect from the former Holy Knights squad leader. The whole group was stunned by this news. They haven't heard of the ninja group since. They were believed to have been blown away. Later, they decided to help the country to the best of their ability in memory of their friends. Sometime after Maki was promoted to guild master, the group split up and traveled to help the world. Goldmine and Bob decided to create their own corporations to help the country. Yajima joined the Magic Council to ensure that the tragedy that happened in Tonwa never happens again, which he had been doing successfully for many years. Makarov and Porlyuzuka remained in Magnolia. She decided the idiot would need a little help to keep the guild going. And Rob decided he could travel and see Fiore, have homes close to major cities and places of interest, and throughout his travels, he has never forgotten what happened to his friends. Rob woke up to the screams of the jailer. He saw that they were yelling at Naruto, who was standing in front of a crying Erza. He could tell that the jailer had once again decided to assert his power against the slaves and the red-haired girl had attracted his attention. Naruto stepped between the sick bastard and Erza, punching him in the balls as he was about to punch her. He grabbed the staff and handed it to the man. The jailer had a furious expression on his face. "You think you can do anything, bastard? Think you can kill me? You think he can't kill you? I've already killed enough to make you cringe," Naruto said with a malicious growl in his voice and anger in his eyes. Rob's eyes widened in shock. He killed. My God, what has he been through? Naruto raised his weapon and was about to strike the cult member. But just as he was about to attack, visions of blood poured through his head. He stopped and froze, a cold sensation spreading through his body. The texture of blood smeared on her hand, pushing hands and feet through the bodies of his enemies. Standing on the piles of bodies that crossed his path, the jailer looked at the frozen boy and smiled. At that moment he hit the boy and took his stick. He aimed it at him and fired a beam into the boy's chest. The boy jumped at the sensation of a million needles piercing his body. After a minute, he stopped shooting and lowered the gun. He turned silently and closed the bars. Then he smiled darkly and chuckled at the boy's feeble attempt to defend himself. Elsa stepped forward and nudged Naruto, waiting for her to respond. After several tries, he finally started to move and propped himself up on his elbows. She took a deep breath and tried to think about what had happened. Why? Why didn't I get through? Why? Because you can't do it anymore. Elsa and Naruto looked over at Rob, who was sitting next to them after the moment had passed. I don't think you will be able to kill more because you will regret it. People who have done bad things go out of their way to make it right. And you didn't comply because you can't bear to take any more lives, she said to the horrified boy. Naruto gained a growing sense of dread. He looked down at the ground and started pounding the ground with his fist. Why damn it! Rob and Erza jumped at his exclamation. He said it was all he had. The only thing that was needed was to kill. I wanted to leave as I thought I had something else. Kakashi told me it could be more, but is it? He looked at Rob with pleading eyes. Is this what the outside world is like? My freedom is gone. My friend is gone. My purpose is gone. He squeezed as hard as he could until his hands started bleeding. What should I do? He didn't ask anyone in particular. He wallowed there in pain, not knowing what he could do. Rob looked sadly at the boy. When someone was in such situations at this age, not much could be done to help them. Words of wisdom only seemed to infuriate them, and ideas about what they could do only made it worse. There was nothing he could do, but then a little red angel came along and led the way. You could join a guild, Elsa said with a bright smile, trying to lighten the mood. Naruto raised his head at her, not understanding what he had just said. What? A guild. A family. This is what Ji-san keeps telling me. How people who have nowhere to go can get together and have fun and have adventures. That anyone can just join in and be a part of something bigger. She said with a big smile gracing her face, looking at the boy who now had a puzzled expression on his face. But I can't explain it because I don't have any. I've seen one, but Ji-san does. She grabbed his hand and pulled him towards Rob. Ji-san, tell him about all those guilds and the things you told me. Please. She looked up at him, with Naruto beside her with a shocked look, her previous pain gone. Rob looked between them, surprised that everything that had happened had been forgotten and was now the center of attention. He smiled and calmed down. Okay, so you two get ready. I'm about to tell you the wonderful stories of guilds around the world. Rob continued to tell his stories and his adventures in fairy tale, adding more details to make his character incredible. Stories of finding treasures, rescuing people and arresting bandits. Erza was elated, continuing to hear the stories for another time. But where Naruto started out with a skeptical look, he then began to listen intently. His eyes get bigger and bigger with each story. He and Erza started laughing when Dryer got caught in a mini tornado. Elsa squealed happily and Naruto gagged as Bobby and Yagi got to know the appreciative girls. And they cheered when their team won against the evil guilds. After the hours passed, both Naruto and Elsa were happy after the story time. Naruto was no longer depressed by the events that had transpired, now he was only interested in guilds. He looked at Elsa and smiled. Thank you. She stopped laughing and looked at him amused. For what? I was very sad before, but everything changed when you brought me here. Naruto smiled at her. Erza was surprised but then formed a smile. You're welcome. You're a good boy, you know that, Erza. Both Rob and Elsa stopped moving and looked at the new boy. Elsa shuddered at the hypothesis. Hey, I'm a girl. That? A girl, idiot, don't you know what a girl is? Naruto shook his head. Rob touched Naruto's shoulder and whispered in his ear, Naruto-kun, girls are different from us. They're cute and sweet, and they don't have that important thing. Rob said a little nervously as he explained the difference between boys and girls to a 6-year-old boy. Naruto looked at Rob questioningly for the last thing she said, causing the former wizard to take a deep breath. That thing between our legs. Naruto bowed his head and walked over to Elsa. He stopped in front of her and then lifted the hem of her clothes. Rob blacked out at the boy's bold behavior and Erza screamed before planting a fist on her cheek. Naruto slid back with one cheek flushed, while Erza had a growing blush painted across her face. She walked over to Rob and pointed at Naruto with a heated gaze. I don't want him here anymore. He's a pervert. Now Erza-chan. I don't think he meant that. Rob waved his hands for the girl to calm down. No, make him apologize. He started waving his arms in a circle at the old man, hoping the boy would apologize. What have I done? You peeked up my skirt, you perv. What is a pervert? You are a pervert. Stop calling me that. Old man, stop. She turned to the old man to see that he was pretending to sleep. Now I'm just leaving him and the angry girl in the cell. She turned to see that the girl had turned her head with her cheeks puffed out. He grumbled and scratched his head, thinking this was all getting too much for one day. I'm sorry, it's fine. Erza looked at him. You suck. How could you do that? You are so wicked. He pointed at her. What exactly did I do? You got mad at me for no reason. You look gah, perv. She began flapping her hands against him once more, Naruto trying to protect himself from her heavy blows. She was insanely strong for a young girl. Didn't your parents teach you any manners? Naruto looked at her through her fists. I have no parents. And you, who taught you to hit people for no reason? She stopped her angry fists and looked at him. I don't know what happened to my parents. She dropped her hands and looked down at her palms, forgetting her anger at the mustachioed boy. I remember before coming here, people cared about me. A man and a woman who loved me dearly, but I don't remember their faces. Naruto looked at the girl and worried. She had become sad very quickly and her eyes were covered by her scarlet hair. One of the reasons I want to join a guild is to find out what happened to my parents, she said as he lifted his head to show teary eyes, but I don't know if I can leave this place. If you can. Erza raised her head to see Naruto with a smile on his face and a clenched fist. You can walk out of this place and find your family easily. You are strong, your punches hurt like hell. Where will you go when you leave this place? Erza lowered her head in embarrassment. I was thinking about joining Fairy Tail. Rob G-san made it look so fun. Then that's where you're going, I'm sure. He said she as he stood proudly and pointed to the false horizon. You will join Fairy Tail, find your family and be the best. She turned and gave her a dazzling smile, which made her happy and nervous at the same time. Why, you can come with me. She said. She avoided her curious look at her statement. I mean, you owe me. You can come to Fairy Tail and we can have an adventure like Rob G-san. I thought you didn't like me. Well, you can fix it well. He said as he waved his hand out in front of him. Deal? He looked at his hand, looked at it again and smiled. He took her hand and squeezed it. Yes. But the problem is, you can't use magic, so I guess I'll have to be the brains of our team. What? Please, I can fight like a million bad guys while you cry in the corner. Oh yes, well, I will scare all the monsters in the world and fly in the sky and destroy whole countries with my attacks. Yeah, well, I'll wipe out the whole world with a fart. Wow, shut up. No, I'll be stronger than you, I promise. Naruto and Elsa continued to argue all night. About who could do what and how they will fight each other. And off to the side Rob smiled, happy to see that the boy and girl were happy at last. Even if he was arguing with each other. Soccer player Another ship arrived at the tower dock. Cult jailers directing the new arrival of slaves at the facility's base. Inside one of the cells were Naruto, Elsa and Rob sitting around each other as Naruto dug in the dirt. Look, this is what I can write. The other two looked down and saw kanji written roughly on the gravel. Rob had decided to teach Naruto how to write the language since he apparently didn't know how. The character was familiar to Rob, knowing this script was used in Fury, but much less so than the letters they used. And on a side note, he had really bad handwriting. You have very bad handwriting. That Elsa, always willing to spread the truth. Shut up, it's okay. She quarreled with the pink-faced child. They didn't teach me very well. Okay Naruto-kun, I'll get you through this. Rob then started giving Naruto a crash course in local script until the sound of the captors driving into the new flesh came through. All the slaves huddled in the corner of their respective cells, all three feeling nervous as other people passed by. A jailer approached his cell and opened the bars, pushing them and throwing out a new child. The moment he landed, he jumped back and pounded his fists on the bars, screaming. Several minutes passed with the boy still throwing curses left and right. Naruto approached the boy and stopped him. The boy reacted immediately, slapping his hand and continuing to bang against the bars. Don't touch me. Who are you? We're slaves here too. Okay, so calm down. The boy hadn't paid any attention to Naruto. After several more moments, Naruto got angry and grabbed the boy and threw him off the bars. Stop it, it's stupid. Why should I? I want out of here. The boy yelled at Naruto. We all want out, but breaking your hands won't get us out. The boy looked down at his injured hands, injured from hitting the bars. Have you calmed down yet? The boy nodded reluctantly. Okay kid, well I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Who the hell are you supposed to be? The boy raised his head, his eyes showing through his blue hair. His eyes were brown and looked at Naruto with contempt. Around his right eye was a strange tattoo. I'm Jellal Fernandez. Who are you, hoodlum? Naruto has a check mark. He knew instantly. This guy was going to be a pain. He slid to the floor of the working cave. He travels over broken slabs of rock and gravel. And he avoided the many bare feet of the slaves who marched beside him. He lifted his head and looked at those moving around him. The boy he had known had disappeared from his sight as she wandered around, hoping to find a mouse or bug to eat. He shot into the air with his severed tongue to get a better position on where he was. After a few moments of inspection of its surroundings, the snake had gotten a general direction of where the boy was. But then, he smelled something different in the air than the rest of the slaves around the snake. Something similar to the boy who took care of him, but also different. He turned his body towards a slave throwing stones. He glided towards the strange boy, scales collecting dirt in his path. After a few seconds she reached his goal, lying down next to his feet. He positioned himself and hissed loud enough to be heard above the crashing rocks. She saw the boy look up from his work and turn his head to see the area around him. After a few seconds, the boy seemed to have shrugged at the sound as a figment of his imagination. Just as he was about to get back to work, the snake hissed louder and finally caught the boy's attention. The boy looked down at his feet and saw a purple snake staring at him. After a few moments of exchanging glances, the boy reacted as the snake had thought he would. "Ack, snake. Go, go." The boy had jumped back and waved his open hands to signal the snake to leave him alone. The snake simply cocked its head and kept looking at the boy. The boy tried various other methods, such as throwing pebbles, hitting them and making loud noises, but the snake didn't back down. The boy let out a deep, annoyed sigh, hesitantly knelt down and held out his hand. "Just don't bite me, okay?" The snake slid into the boy's palm and wrapped itself around his hand, feeling the scrapes and rough calluses of years of work as he moved. The boy stood up and brought the palm of his hand up to his eyes to get a better view of the snake. When he raised his hand, the snake also took a better look at him. He had wiry blonde hair that stood up in all directions. He had strong blue eyes that seemed to look into a deep lake. And on each of her cheeks were 3 mustaches, giving the impression of scars. The boy studied the snake carefully for several moments. Looking at the reptile from every angle his hand could afford, the snake constantly watched him as he did so. He made space between himself and the snake in his hand and smiled. "Well, aren't you pretty? However, it's a bit rare to see a snake here. Rare to see an animal in general." She raised an eyebrow and gave a questioning look. "You're not starving, so you've been fed. Who fed you, little ooh?" The boy continued to question the silent animal until he was comically kicked in the face. The snake was shot into the air as the strange boy slipped on the floor and hit his head. The reptile did not change expression or movement as it flew through the air, spinning around an axis. When he returned to Earthland, he landed in another, more familiar pair of hands. He immediately put himself at ease and began to squeeze tightly around her hand. He was brought to her face where he began to brush against her cheek. The boy fingered the contents, until his eyes rolled up in anger. "Hey, I don't want to see you play anymore, can you hear me?" The brown-haired boy yelled an accusing finger at the blonde boy he had just lowered into the concrete. Said boy stood up and stared at the slant-eyed boy who had kicked him. "Hey, why the hell did you kick me, asshole? If you wanted the snake, then you can have it." He snorted before dodging a stone aimed at his face. He held his balance to see the snake boy with his hand out after throwing the stone. What the hell was it for? "Don't call her, it, monster. Her name is Kuberos and she is my dearest friend." He looked at his hand and saw that the snake was looking at him with something like happiness. He smiled at the snake. The blonde boy looked at the strange boy with a blank stare. "So your friend is a snake, well, I hope you two are happy together," he said as he clapped in mock support. The boy with the slanted eyes pointed at the boy with the mustache. "Hey, we're not like that, idiot." Then he turned his head and scratched the underside of the purple snake. "Also, if it was still in your hands, it might catch cosplayer cat disease," he said with a wry smile hidden by his stance. The blonde boy was furious and steam came out of his ears. She walked over to the snake boy and pointed at him. "Hey, I'm not a kitty cosplayer. Just because Millie Chan likes to call me Neko Man sometimes doesn't mean a thing. I'm only doing it to cheer her up." Peeved, any Catman. He continued to stroke the snake. "And damn it, my name isn't Catman, it's Naruto Uzumaki." "Very good," he yelled as he pointed with his thumb to emphasize his point. "We can't all be like you, snake," he said with a condescending chuckle. "Make the snake boy stand up and hit his forehead with Naruto." "It's not. My name is Eric," he said as he tried to win this pushing game between him and the blonde boy. Sparks flying between his eyes. "You're just a snake man to me, little one." Naruto had momentarily forced Eric back, a smirk on his face as he won. Until Eric started to push away, his eyes furious at him. "Not a kid, bitch. I'm probably older than you, punk." "Absolutely not. I turned 12 a few weeks ago. I'm so old." He thought he had won until he saw Eric grow into a bigger smile. Oh, so I won. I'm 12.5 years old. So you must refer to me as Eric-sama senpai." The boys kept pushing until they both pulled away. They both rubbed their red foreheads to ease the pain. After Naruto calmed down, he turned to the crimson-haired boy. "Look, you must be younger, Only kids use the month's excuse to win an argument about age. Hey, just because you're a kid, doesn't mean we all have wrinkled coats like you. So talk to me respectfully, brat. Eric smiled at the boy that he had insulted her snake friend by touching her. Of course. Respect. So what should I call you? He said with a sarcastic tone superimposed on his voice. Snake Eyes? Does it slip? Maybe I should call you King Cobra. She said as a tick grew on his head from the annoyance the slightly older boy was causing him. That's how. Eric snapped his fingers and pointed a finger higher. I am the Cobra, bitch. The best and deadliest of snakes. So be careful or I'll poison you to death, you idiot, he growled as he raised his hands and spread his fingers to mock the snake's fangs. Taste it and I'll rip out your fangs, asshole. Naruto raised his middle finger and growled back. The boys continued to stare at them until they heard the bell. They both turned and walked away. Naruto turned his head and addressed the new boy he had met. Take care of yourself. Don't think I'll lose to someone like you, understood? Eric smiled at the mustachioed boy's defiant charge. Please, if you touch Kuberos again, I'll kick your ass from the center of the earth and back. Eric continued her march to his cell where his groups of misfit friends were held. When he arrived he saw the silent boy lying on the ground and the girl watching through the bars. In the corner, the long-nosed boy was kicking dirt. And finally, in the center of the cell was the burly boy throwing stones. As she sat down across from him, the fat, orange-haired boy acknowledged her arrival. Eric-san, you're back. The boy seemed genuinely happy to be back. She looked at him expectantly. Any news? She bounced into her place. The snake boy continued to look at the snake. I'm sorry, Richard. No dice. He looked at the big boy again, seeing that he had developed a depressed face. I promise I'll tell you if I can find your brother Wally. But until then, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a fresh potato he had stolen from the kitchen and tossed it to the boy. Enjoy yourself. Richard looked happier after receiving the potato. Even if he couldn't find his brother, a potato always brought him out of his depression. He peeled off the starch and took a bite. Looking up again, she saw that the reptile lover had a thought in mind as she tended to the snake. Is something wrong, Eric-san? He asked the boy as he chewed the raw food. Some skin got stuck between his teeth. The almond-eyed boy shook himself out of his depression at the sudden question. Oh, it's nothing, Richard. He looked down again and stroked the snake as he stroked his palm. I just met a really annoying asshole, he said with a smile. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck and yawned from exhaustion. It was getting exhausting, working like this every day. He had gotten a lot stronger and bigger since he was 6 years old, a long time ago. Though, as far as Rob G-chan was concerned, he was still quite short for someone his age. But he had to maintain his strong boy appearance among his friends. By the way, he had just separated from the large group of returning slaves. He passed the bars and saw all his friends playing in the middle, with Rob G-chan sideways watching them. Naruto flashed a confident smile and walked over to his friends. Hello lads. She said with a wave of her hand. The six raised their heads and looked at the newcomer. They saw it was him and smiled. The older members of the group waved to him as the boy and girl ran towards him, the girl hugging him to the chest. Nay, Na-chan. Where were you? Er-chan and everyone was worried when you didn't come back in time. The little girl with the kittenish pout and brown hair looked at the older boy. He flashed a cheeky smile and a guttural laugh. Ha ha Millie-chan. Why are you worrying? I got caught by this big snake that wanted to stop and eat me. He looked down to see the boy and girl looking at him with concern. But I thoroughly kicked him and skinned him alive, for I will always come out victorious, he said as he raised his fist in the air. Yes. The boy and the girl rejoiced at the story of their older brother. The dark-skinned boy with the brightly styled blonde hair looked at Naruto. Hey Ni-san, are you sure you're okay? That looks really scary. The 8-year-old fell to his knees until Naruto placed his hand on the boy's head. Come on Sho. Have a little faith in your older brother, it's all right. He said with a smile as the boy wiped away his tears and smiled at him. He had to tell stories to calm the boy and girl when they were frantic. Naruto would freak out when captors and such approached him, but he cut a good figure in the eyes of the kids to raise their hopes. Anything he could do to make this hellish experience easier for them. Naruto led the two back to the group who were looking at him questioningly. He smiled and shrugged, not arguing that perhaps he was making fun of the stories he told. Everyone laughed and looked towards the center where they were writing something on the floor. "What are you guys doing?" Wally lifted his full head of black hair and chuckled. "We're playing tic-tac-toe. These two guys have been kicking Simon and me ass." He and the boy with a lock of black hair glanced slightly at the blue and red-haired boys who were laughing at each other. After the little attack they had, the two readjusted and stared at the ground again. Wally looked at Naruto as he sat down next to him. "Who do you think will win this?" Naruto shrugged and scratched his scalp and turned to Simon. "I have no idea. And you, Simon, any ideas?" Simon looked from both to him. "Under normal circumstances, I think Jellal would win because he has more experience in games like chess. But Erza has an ardent determination to win this little tournament and we know she won't give up." He shot a questioning look at Naruto, who nodded sagely at the guess. "Or, it could be that he picked the X, and they always win." Jellal turned to the peanut gallery and yelled, "Okay, we get it." "Shut up. I'm thinking about it." He looked back at the ground and reviewed his options for winning. He thought of every possible move and strategy he could have pulled off. Then he realized she boxed him with X, while he was distracted by the talking idiots. His face went blank and he looked down in defeat as the slave made the last X and emerged victorious. "I win!" she yelled as she raised his hands in victory, jumping all over him and down in the same spot. The others joined her in celebration as Naruto knelt down and patted Jellal on the back. "Okay mate, I've lost to her so many times I can't even count anymore." She tried to cheer him up only by ordering the blue boy to take a long look at him. "Hello Naruto. Lose to everyone when it comes to strategy games. You're the dumbest one here." Naruto pouted at his blue friend's accusation, even though it was true. He decided to let the boys suffer the annual pain and walk together with his oldest friend. "We have a winner. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the undefeated champion, Erza Scarlet." She raised her hand and all of her family members in the cell cheered, even Jellal after he shed his loser aura. He showed a big smile on his face and bowed. "What do I get? What do I get?" Elsa questioned the rest of the group in a cheery voice. The group shrugged, not thinking about what the prize for victory would be. Just as her excitement was about to subside, Rob reached out and picked her up, earning a quick squeal. He put her on his shoulders and started running laughing. "The winner can fly in the air, congratulations." The rest of the group followed in a circle as her old man ran. The girl cheered with joy as her grandfather played with her. Naruto followed, laughing at Erza's boundless happiness at that moment. Remembering the first time Rob had done it for both of them. Despite being so old, the man was still strong and agile. After a few more minutes, Rob finally lowered the girl to the floor, where he agreed to meet up with his friends again. He watched from his corner as everyone started talking about what happened today. Jellal and Simon talk about the work they have done. Sho talking about what he and Nei-san ate today. And finally, Naruto exaggerates his story of how he interacted with Eric aka the Serpent King. Rob couldn't help but laugh from his seat as the others laughed and gasped as Naruto simulated being eaten by a giant snake and exploding from the inside. He had realized that these children had done everything to turn a bad situation into a good one. Play and talk to each other. Listening to some of Rob's old fairy tale stories. Rob was given a wistful look when he saw how much that awkward little boy had grown over the past 6 years. He played a lot with Elsa and Jellal when they were kids. Have small rivalries with them to see who was better. Sometimes he won when it came to power games and mutual improvement. But it sucked on a whole different level when it came to thinking and strategy games. This was likely the result of not having a very thorough education growing up. Even his impromptu lessons in his cell couldn't do much. But that never stopped the boy from doing what he wanted. What he couldn't do right, he did his way. In fact, it was highly recommended that someone his age fight any problems he encountered. Well, aside from his writing skills, which still sucked even now. Rob snapped out of his thoughts of him as he saw the entire group cheer as Naruto and Simon lay on their stomachs and raised their hands from their elbows. They intertwined and stared at each other until Miliana let go of her hands and they began to wrestle with each other's arms. Some cheers and cheers were heard from the group as the two continued their mock battle. As it seemed like Simon was gaining the upper hand, Naruto was struggling to continue. Even though Naruto was a few months older, Simon had a bigger frame than him and could lift heavier rocks that others couldn't. It was amazing how young people like these kids were so strong. Naruto was raising his hand a few degrees from where they started and smiled. Naruto calmed his mind and controlled his breathing. He felt his power travel through his body and into his hands. He smiled as he looked at Simon, who immediately understood what that wicked smile meant. Naruto began to growl as he overwhelmed Simon with the force. After several moments of wasted effort, Naruto slammed Simon's hand to the ground and stopped clapping. Rob chuckled as he saw Naruto use his chakra to win the match. He remembered several years ago that Naruto was trying to use the power that his demon friend was teaching him in his cell. After many weeks of trying to regain the latent power, Naruto was finally able to call back some of his strength. Rob supervised Naruto when he tried to do this, to see if he could find any change in Naruto's presence when he did. Rob had come to the conclusion that Naruto's power-up was there, but it was extremely hard. That with the training and control he has, at most, he could increase his power by a small factor. When Naruto tested this theory, he nearly broke his hand against the wall, saying he wanted to see if he could destroy it. Rob let out a very deep sigh, remembering his effort to explain the slight improvement to the 7-year-old at the time. And what is he supposed to use that power for? I. Naruto raised his right hand, which had comically swelled and turned fiery red from the pain of hitting the wall. Rob was refreshing his hand by taking some of his rationed water and pouring it over another bandage he'd made from his shirt. Erza and Jellal sat next to Naruto as his father figure treated him. I really thought it would work, he said, trying to sound confident like he didn't just look stupid in front of everyone. Yeah, well, Rob said as he turned his attention to wrapping the boy's hand. Don't do it again, it's okay. You're not strong enough yet. He finished wrapping and let go of the boy's hand. Damn, it was hard trying to be a doctor when you couldn't use your magic to cure the most troubled boy. Jellal looked at the hand of the former Jinchuriki. Then, from the hand, he looked at the wall he had hit and thought for a minute. Maybe I should try? I bet I'll break the wall on my first hit, he said excitedly as Naruto stood behind him. Oh yeah, well, that was a practice shot. I'll break it next time I try, he said, taking his fist back as if to strike again. No, he'll break through the wall, Jellal said as Erza leapt to her feet and stood beside them. Me too, I'll try. The three threw back their fists. Bakas. Rob Karate chopped off the heads of all three in an instant. The three crouched down, holding their respective bundles on their heads. Do not even try. Oh, why not Rob G-san? Jellal asked with a painful tear in his eye, Erza moaning and Naruto clutching his head and the throbbing hand that had just hit the wall. If we could break the wall, we could escape. Well, first of all, no one breaks a wall with one punch, Rob said in a matter-of-fact tone that astounded all three children. And second, you all are not strong enough yet to do something like this. The three looked at each other. Erza looked at the former fairy wizard. Well, how can we get strong, G-san? Rob looked at the children, leaned back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. He looked at them again, thinking he just found the best answer to the question. When I was in Fairy Tale, I had a lot of friends that I spent time with almost every day. We joked, had fun and played. They would kick me in the face and then I would break a bottle on Maki's short head. My god, that was fun, Rob said as he laughed, remembering that the dwarf had used Titan after destroying the guild hall. The three kids listened to his story, sweating also from the fact that the old man had smashed a bottle over his friend's head. I thought those stupid days would last forever. But after a while I discovered that there are people stronger than you. And when you're not strong enough to save your friends, you can't help but regret what might have happened. He recalled how Makarov and the group felt when they found out about Tonwa's accident. How devastated they were that they couldn't stop their ninja friends from getting hurt. Rob looked the children in the eye and gave a firm determination. You have to get strong to be able to keep the people you love safe. And to be able to stop anyone who wants to hurt them, even if they're stronger. She smiled at the three children. This is how we can be strong. The slave children lit up at his words and looked at the three with a smile. Elsa stood up. I'm going to get strong and make sure you two stay safe. Jellal stood up. Absolutely not. I will become the strongest of all of us. Look. Naruto stood up with a cheeky smile. Oh really? Well, I'm sorry, but I'll be the best. The strongest, fastest, and best wizard anyone has ever seen. I'll show both of us that no matter what happens to me, I'll never get hurt, he said as he dropped her hands to his sides and let out a long, raucous laugh. Jellal smacked Naruto's bandaged hand and rocked him to his knees, cursing in all directions. Rob was sweating from his antics. They had a long way to go. And though Naruto wasn't a giant with that power, it helped him in his job by helping him stay strong. He has helped the other children a lot by also working with them in their fields. It helped others a lot when they saw him get up after working so hard, giving them hope that they can get through this. Then he remembered all the times that the other children also came to his cell. How Wally had screamed that he wanted to see his brother again. And when he cried the whole first night, Naruto, Jellal and Erza tried to cheer him up any way they could. To this day they still tried to help him find his brother when they could. And how Simon leapt up again after being thrown and attacked the jailer. They didn't respond kindly and surprised him until he started screaming. Surprisingly, Erza was the one who thwarted the attack and took the last one. After the bastards were gone, Jellal, Wally and Naruto checked on them while Rob tried to heal them as best he could. Then approached Simon and cheered him up, making the boy blush bright red. Rob would never have guessed it, but he'd seen Naruto pout in jealousy at the attention Simon was getting. Oh, he laughed so hard that day. Finally, just a year ago, Miliana and Sho were brought to the tower. Instantly, the two had rolled their eyes at the situation. After a while, everyone tried to cheer them up, but nothing worked. Until Elsa hugged Sho and told him she would protect him. Sho had been crying into his small chest for the rest of the night. But Miliana wasn't so convinced, at least at the beginning. It was getting dark in the tower. Most of the slaves had been in their cells while some went to do extra work. In one cell, the sobs and sobs of a girl could still be heard. Miliana had sat away from the rest of the children, rubbing her red swollen eyes to keep from crying. The rest of the kids and Rob could only watch sadly. Everyone looked to each other about what they could do to cheer her up. They had tried everything possible, but no result of their work had shown. Finally Naruto got up and marched in front of the girl. He looked at the 11-year-old boy who immediately hugged him tightly. "Everything will be fine, I promise you," he said as he turned his face to look directly into his eyes, which were staring at him. "You won't be hurt by anyone here. We will protect you, because we are all we have of each other." Okay. He tried to explain to the 7-year-old that he was watching him with wide, hypnotized eyes. Naruto shook his head from side to side, the girl following his movements. She reached out and stroked his cheek, earning a confused look from everyone who looked at her. The girl showed a wide, warm smile and laughed. "Kitten. You're a kitten." Naruto looked at the girl with a surprised look. The others were holding back a giggle. What? "I'm not a kitten," said the boy with strong determination. "Yes you are," she said without changing her happy expression. "You have a mustache, so you're a kitten." What? She looked to her side to see everyone she knew choking on laughter with their hands over their mouths. He turned and was about to argue with the girl, only to fall silent when he saw her huge eyes staring back at him. Naruto took a deep breath and gripped the bridge of his nose. "I'm not a kitty," he said sternly, catching the attention of everyone present as he stood proudly with his hands raised in victory. "I am Neko Man. Neon," he said, his chest heaving with pride. His friends gaped at him, unable to believe what they had just seen. Miliana started clapping and clapping, forcing Naruto to continue his silly antics to make the girl laugh. Soon after, the rest of his group started laughing as well. Jellal and Simon posed as villains so that Neko Man would defeat them in the little act of him. They'd been playing that game all night, cheering on the 2 new additions to their roster. Rob was so caught up in his memories that he didn't realize it was already night. He looked around and saw that the younger members had already fallen asleep. The older children had stayed up talking a little longer. Of their dreams and possibilities when they were finally free. Wally had wanted to find his older brother. When he did, they would probably open a farm and find families together. It was a simple but beautiful dream to realize. Simon had decided to join the Rune Knights. He wanted to use his latent magical power to help the world in any way possible, and he just wanted to help as many people as possible. Jellal dreamed big. He wanted to travel all over the earth. I wanted to see the Bosco and Siete mountains, and visit the frozen ground of Iceberg. And then move to the huge country in the kingdom of Pergrande and back. Maybe even beyond that land and see all he could. He never wanted to be tied down to anything. And everyone knew what Erza and Naruto's dream was. They were about to join the infamous fairy tale guild. Travel across the country and become famous and strong. And between the two of them, trying to find Erza's parents in that big world out there. As everyone yawned and got ready for bed, they took their special places on the floor. Simon huddled close to the soft ground next to a rock. Wally lay down on the floor against the wall. Jellal leaned against the wall and fell asleep. Naruto and Erza lay next to each other in opposite directions. Rob thought it was cool that after such a long time these two had become such good friends that they trusted each other to always be by their side. He remembered all the playful shouting and arguing between the two of them. How Naruto would hug and comfort Erza if she was ever hurt. And how Elsa would help Naruto if he ever worked irregularly. But the closest moment between them was a moment Rob would never forget for the rest of his life. The day Erza got her last name. Rob is back in his cell after a long day in bondage. He could feel his arms and back ache as he stretched. He passed the open bars to a rather singular sight. Naruto, Jellal, Elsa and Wally sat in a jagged circle. Naruto was thinking deeply. Jellal and Wally eyed him critically as Elsa fidgeted in place. Rob was thinking of asking them what they were doing, but he'd never seen Naruto think so much about a subject before. Naruto raised his head and said with a smile, "I know, we'll call her Ramuphasomas. That's a good name." As Naruto looked to his friends for confirmation, he was stunned when Jellal and Wally nodded the idea away. "What? Sounds good." Jellal shook his head. "No, it's not like that. It seems like an incomprehensible speech. It has to be something real." Naruto turned red with anger. "Well, after an hour we have nothing, so if there are any good ideas go ahead." Naruto did his best to calm down. But it's hard for a 9-year-old to take so much rejection and keep face. What are you doing?" Rob made himself known to the small group of growing kids. Everyone looked at him. The boys were angry, and Erza was red with embarrassment. "Rob Ojasan, we have a problem we can't solve," Jellal said as the man of conversation for the group. "We just found a horrible problem that we can no longer hush up." "That? And it's nothing, Ji-san," Elsa said as she tried to change the subject and draw attention away from her. The 8-year-old little redhead still had a problem when everyone turned their attention to her. "Turns out she Erza here," Naruto said as the tension began to build. She doesn't have a last name." He pointed at the girl in question, who had a blush on her face similar to her hair as she tried to punch her blonde friend's face in the face. "I always thought she never said her last name because she was embarrassed, but she doesn't have one. And not that it matters," Elsa said as she tried to avoid eye contact with her friends out of embarrassment. "I'm just Erza anyway." No, you're not just Erza," Naruto said almost furiously. "You're so nice and kind, so it's a shame you can't have a last name like the rest of us," Naruto said as he stood up to emphasize his point and leave no room for discussion. "That's why I say we should call it Hamweed. Seems to work well with Elsa," he said, hoping to get approval from the rest of the team. "Naruto, we will not call her Erza Amiyatoka. Looks like we're making fun of her." Wally cut in from Jellal, who was nodding. "You only want to call her that because you have a horrible sense of names." "That. I don't suck at names. Your name is Naruto. How can you be taken seriously when you are named after a fish cake?" "For the last fucking time, what the hell is fish pie?" Naruto said as he got annoyed at her constant jokes about anything that was cake. "That's who you are, stupid," Jellal said as he and Naruto began to clash. They stayed like that until they separated and sat down, a dark cloud covering the children for not being able to help their friend. "We can't think of anything. It's useless." Rob looked at the boys with mild concern and understanding. Given his experience with Makarov and Porlyuzuka, it was difficult to name the girls properly. Either you couldn't find the right word for them, Or every idea you had just didn't pay off? He looked at Erza, who though she was protesting, she had quickly acquired a sad look only to drop it almost instantly. Naruto was slowly nodding to what his friend, brother, rival had said. He looked back to see that Elsa was exhaling slowly, the awkward tension fading as they stopped arguing about her. He watched her for a few more seconds until she got up and started walking. Everyone was watching him as he walked up behind her Erza, and he ran his hands through her hair, earning a soft squeal of surprise from the girl. He seemed to be studying her head, ignoring the girl's request to stop until she briefly looked up from her hair. She got a confused look from everyone present, even from the girl who couldn't look directly behind her due to the position of her friend. She has really nice hair, so maybe we should give her that name. Hey, yeah. Jellal was convinced by his fellow slave's surprisingly clever idea. It's a good idea. Okay. Naruto smiled behind Erza. We'll call her Red Erza from now on. He opened his eyes to see everyone giving him blank, emotionless stares. Like he just went in front of an entire city and proclaimed himself an idiot. That? Wally kept his blank stare. We won't call her that. Why not? Jellal joined in the explanation. Because it looks stupid. Plus, her hair isn't just red, it's a different shade than normal red. Naruto looked at them and tended to a tick growing on the back of his head from being bitten by nits. Isn't red just red? No, her hair is more brown or crimson than red. Wally said to the blonde ex-gunslinger, trying to explain his point of view. Jellal grabbed her chin as he thought and buzzed. I think her hair is something other than crimson. Maybe vermilion or maybe scarlet. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized what the tattooed boy had just said in his musings of him. Wait, what was that? It sounded good. Scarlet. Scarlet. Yes, that's right. The others looked at him in shock as he put his hands on their shoulders and received a huge smile. Erza Scarlet. That looks amazing. Jellal listened to his friend's idea from his suggestion and gasped in understanding. Yes, Scarlet works for her. It's the color of her hair, so we'll never forget it. She stood up and threw up her arms exulting. Meet Erza Scarlet, future wizard of fairy tale. Yes. Wally and Naruto jumped in the air with excitement. Naruto turned to Erza and looked into her eyes. Is Scarlet okay? Do you like that name? He made the point with pleading eyes, not wanting to go back and think of other names. Erza was still shocked by the sudden excitement of barely noticing Naruto speaking to her. She raised her hands and ran her fingers softly through her hair. She rolled her eyes and said softly, Erza Scarlet. She looked into the wide eyes of her friends again, waiting for their opinion on her new name. She smiled and nodded with a slight blush and small tears in her eyes. The children cheered and ran around in celebration. Jellal and Naruto had a little argument about who had actually called her. But that was quickly dropped when they decided to start saying their new full name in quick succession. Erza ignored the boys over the moon and walked over to her grandfather, who was still in shock from the actions that had just occurred. Hey Oja-san, how about my new name? She said with evident hope in her voice. Rob had closed his eyes, but that was just to hold back the possibility of tears coming to his eyes. This was the first time in many years that he had seen the girl with so much joy and life in her eyes. He put an arm over her face and bent down, ruffling her hair. I think it's beautiful, Erza-chan. The girl smiled brightly at his grandfather. Rob chuckled softly and leaned against the rock face next to Jellal. He looked at the children he had seen grow so much over the last few years. Some I had only known for a few years. Some I had seen change for more than a decade. Rob closed his eyes and fell asleep. I knew these children could take care of themselves. Visions of bodies piled up before his eyes once more. His hands were drenched in the strange blood of the ninja that surrounded him. His wounds burned and faded as always. Danzo calls from the top of the cliff the formation that the ninja must take. The bull and the cat furrow the vain assaults of their enemies. Immensely powerful attacks launched in all directions. Naruto once again dreamed of the fights and battles taking place in his subconscious. For the past 6 years, every few nights the war had played out in his dreams. Not constantly, or even the whole war every time. But enough of the battle to remember every moment with precision. But no matter what role he played in her head, he always needed the same thing. with the silhouette of the familiar fox towering over him and disappearing. He could see that Kurama had noticed his presence and recognized that he was there. The demon turned slightly and said the same thing every time. "Hey, I didn't want you to see me as this kid. I thought you'd sleep with this and wake up happy. But we're never that lucky, huh? I guess you probably won't hear everything I say. Listen to me, boy." Kurama descended and addressed him because he knew that his consciousness of him was fading at that moment. "The day will come when you will be free. You will likely go through a lot of trials and pain. But hey, that's the way it is." His body was fading, leaving only his upper body. "You'll probably want to cry sometimes, but don't. You'll show that you can't. Take the pain, wear it and find what you can protect. Then." Nothing. I couldn't hear what she was saying as his body vanished. Naruto tried his best to listen to what Kurama was saying as he vanished, but he just couldn't catch his last words. And that felt worse than anything else Naruto had ever done. I knew those last words were important, which carried with them a message that affected Naruto even though he couldn't hear them. And so Naruto was forced to stay there, in his dream, unable to do anything to affect what happened. Once again he was listening to his friend's last words which had just fallen on deaf ears. Elsa awoke to the sound of cult members forcing slaves back to work. She looked around and saw the other slaves waking up just like her. They would go out into the daily routine before being driven out by the pain of torture. Elsa looked down and saw that Naruto was still whispering, having another nightmare like the one he's had for several years. Elsa nudged him awake. Naruto snapped awake in a cold sweat. He softened his gaze, knowing that Naruto was in great pain trying to be a leader. He looked at her to see that he was there, ready to help him if he turned around too much. "Well," he said with a sweet little smile. He calmed down and relaxed before starting to stand up. "I know," he said without looking at her. He would have taken offense at anyone else, but she knew even those little thanks were sincere. He exhaled and turned to her, hand outstretched and a smile on his face. "Come on." Elsa nodded and took his hand to get up. Sho grabbed another stone and placed it inside the wheeled cart, carried by a middle-aged man. He exhaled slowly and turned, trying to pick up another heavy stone. He tried, but his arms shook with the weight. His knees gave out and he dropped the rock into the pile. He got up again to pick up the rock. It would not have failed, it would have been strong. His thoughts traveled to the older children in his group. Miliana had made her experience here less horrific by lighting up the air. Make the rest of their friends laugh and listen to them. Simon could easily lift many of these rocks without straining, and he could do this job for a good hour. Wally always had kids around, helping Sho when he needed it. He helped him hide from the jailers and prevented them from questioning him about his work. Jellal was perhaps the smartest person he had ever met, thinking of ways to play and get the job done as well as possible. He has also been thinking a lot about elopement plans with Naruto until last year's example. Naruto and Elsa were as he wished they were. Erza was the kind Nei-san who took care of him. It got him through all the pain and worry when he arrived. And Naruto always treated him with admiration and respect. He kept telling him that one day he would become very strong. Sho kept working and thought about what he could do. He wasn't very strong or smart or cherry like the rest of them. I couldn't drive and think of plans like them. He couldn't be like any of them. I was going to be stuck in this hell forever. Sho lifted another rock and saw water pouring over them. He realized he was crying again after thinking about it so much. Even though they played and joked, they were still stuck here. Even when they tried to make things easier, they still did slave labor. Sho held back the tears. He inhaled hard to hold back the runny nose that accompanied those tears. He lifted another rock and saw a small covered shaft. Sho wiped his eyes and looked around, noting that most of the slaves were working around the corner. Sho made his way to the vent and raised the barricade, revealing a deep tunnel that stretched as far as the eye could see. Sho picked up a small stone and stuck it into the hole, listening to the echo as the stone leapt over the rock. Sho slowly gave a big smile and then hit it, turning around to make sure no one was looking. He raised the barricade again and covered the hole. He continued with his work the rest of the time, keeping a small hidden smile on his face. She had found a way to help everyone. He had found a way out of the sky tower. "Did you find what?" Elsa whispered to the dark-skinned boy who had come to her during their shared work in the Great Cave. The time was near when the slaves were being sent back to their cells. Sho had been hiding this secret all day and could no longer contain it. He then told the person closest to him, his Nae-san. "I told you, I found a way out of the tower," she whispered with a big smile as Erza did her best to keep the boy quiet. "It's a little tunnel at the end of the work path that goes to the vents. Don't tell others about it until we're healed," he said. She as Sho nodded. "This is a secret, okay?" "What's the secret?" Elsa went blank as the other children appeared almost out of nowhere behind her. She complained about the lack of privacy in the place and approached them. He began to explain the information Sho had found. Everyone else gasped at the mention of the tunnel. "Can we escape? Really?" Miliana said as she did her best not to jump up and down. He looked at the others, who had a look of fear on their faces. "What happened?" "Millie, don't we better talk about this? It could end badly," Wally said to the girl as she looked like she was about to argue when Jellal interrupted. "Miliana, do you remember what happened last year?" Miliana and Sho shuddered at the mention of that horrific act performed by the jailers last year. The kids watched as Rob argued with Naruto and Jellal as he yelled softly. Both argued that they should work on ideas to escape this hellhole while they could. They should work to help the two children who had just joined their group just a few days ago. The children were worried because their grandfather always told them it was a bad idea to run away. How this pain and torture they went through every day was better than the alternative. And when Naruto and Jellal decided to ask why this happened, they were interrupted with a strong command sent from the teardrop speaker. "Attention all workers, refer to the central cave. Attention all workers, refer to the central cave." The slaves had grown tired of his emphasis on the word worker, as if they had a choice in the position they were in. Slaves peeked through the bars to see what the jailers meant. Down in the center of the cave was the chief jailer with 3 slaves beaten on their knees. One of them was a woman, with shoulder-length black hair. The other was a man, with short brown hair that didn't even reach his forehead. And finally, he was a kid his age. He had a shaved head, black hair and prominent yellow eyebrows. But his most distinguishing feature was his long, hooked nose that reached well past his face. The jailer paced between them, like a father confronting his wayward children. He held the teardrop speaker in one hand and a spear in the other. He was shaking his head in disappointment as he thought about what to say to the masses. He stopped pacing along the trench and put the loudspeaker to his mouth. "I really don't know what to say to all of you. I mean, I thought I'd been forgiving and kind all this time. I gave you food, clothing and a place to live. And above all, I have given purpose to your useless lives," he said as his face twisted and angry, veins appeared on his face. He walked behind the slaves and continued his tirade. "And we all have them trying to get out of this place when they need to work. I mean, when I give this to people and they take it for granted, I get so, side of the head with the sharp end of the spear." Some of the slaves in the tower gasped at the act. Miliana buried her face in Simon's chest. He withdrew his spear and trampled her body. "And if I can't get results for my kindness, Zareth knows what I will do." He released her and grabbed the end of her, turned and indicated the woman's face. A mass fireball exploded in her head, the smoke that came out of that place on his shoulders. His corpse fell backwards as smoke covered what had happened to his head. The boy gasped and trembled as the angry cult master approached him. The jailer thrust his spear into his back and bowed. He looked into the boy's eyes as the boy nearly urinated in fear of him. Little by little the jailer smiled a cowardly smile at the result his actions had had. "You can't escape from here. You will never escape our clutches. You're not fast enough to escape." He leaned even closer to the boy's trembling face, "And you never will." He was on his feet when 2 jailers grabbed the boy by the arms and led him back to his cell. "I really don't want to deal with any more of these escape issues that we have. Because when we do, I'm going to have to lead by example." The master looked at the frightened faces of all the slaves he could see. "Good night." The jailer walked away from the center as more men arrived and grabbed the 2 bodies. Rob watched the effect that sight had on the children. Miliana and Sho were sobbing next to Simon and Elsa. Wally and Simon barely held back tears from the actions that had just happened. Elsa wept silently, wiping her eyes from the gushing tears. Jellal shivered as he gripped the bars for support. Finally Rob glanced at Naruto, who was staring at the retreating figure of the head warder. He had experienced the need to escape so many times in his past. But unlike when he was a boy, these men didn't see them as a unique weapon. He turned and looked at Rob. Rob looked at Naruto before opening his eyes. "I don't want to see you killed. Anything but that." Naruto looked away and looked at his feet. He tried to keep his anger under control. "I finally understand why Rob G-chan always stopped them." Everyone trembled at the memory of that day. Since then, all the slaves in the tower had resigned themselves to their fate. Even the overly excited kids were put down for some time afterwards. But here was a possible racing opportunity. A chance to finally get out of the tower. To be free for the first time in years, but we won't run like they did. We can sneak over there and jump on one of the boats when they come out to get more people. Sho said as he tried to reinforce his reasoning as they got back to work. "Sho, are you sure?" Simon asked as he drove the wagon past them. Sho nodded his head. "But if we fail, they'll probably kill us," Wally said as he lifted a rock onto the pile. The rest of the group listened to his reasoning and considered the circumstances. "But if we don't risk it, we'll be here forever. We have to try," Jellal said as he split rocks with a pickaxe. "I don't know. Naruto, what do you think?" Erza turned her head to her blonde friend and saw that her eyes were covered by her hair. "Naruto? Please, we have to do it now, while we still have the chance," Sho said while standing on a pile of stones. "If we wait any longer, then no, oh no." Sho tried to grab the rock he dropped as he rolled down the makeshift hill. The others were silent as the stone fell to the ground, causing dust to accumulate on a jailer's robe. The jailer looked down at his now dusty robe. He followed the still fresh dirt path to the top, with a small boy standing there with his arms outstretched. The boy was shaking and had tears in his eyes. The jailer knew the boy had only dropped the stone, but anything he could do to assert his position helped. "What do we have here?" he said as he kicked the base of the hill, causing the boy to fall and roll at the man's feet. The boy looked up as he held onto his painfully skinned knee. "Have you tried to attack just knowing it?" No, yes sir. I wasn't trying to. Sho gasped in terror at the evil smile the man was looking at. "But it's so obvious you were trying to kill me by throwing that rock," he screamed as he touched his fake wounds, earning moans from the slaves surrounding him and laughter from the other guards. "And for that, I'll have to punish you." He raised the spear to the boy's face. Sho shivered in terror as everyone and everything froze around him. "Sorry Kigak." The jailer squealed in pain as a large rock collided with the top of his head, leaving a large gash and dent in his head. Sho, the captors and the other slaves all froze at the unexpected attack. The jailer stared at his position holding his bleeding temple and swollen eye. "Who the fuck shoot that?" the man screamed. The surrounding audience watched as the blonde boy with sideburns calmly threw a stone into his hand. He looked at the injured guard and gave a small laugh. "Oh sorry. You were so busy with the guy who tried to kill you that I accidentally let a rock slip through my hands. My mistake," he said as he finished with a mischievous smile. You little shit." The jailer grabbed his cane and fired a bolt of lightning that badly hit the blonde boy. He held that flow of electricity for several minutes, which made the boy scream in pain. Elsa and the others watched in horror at the torture before them. When Elsa tried to help him, she widened her eyes and told her to stay put. After a few more minutes, the attack ceased and the jailer withdrew, holding the wound. He was cursing as loud as he could and cursing the hell out of the boy. When the jailers left, they ordered the slaves to their cells. Simon and Jellal reached down and put Naruto's arm around his shoulders and lifted him up. The whole group followed them to the cell. They returned and lowered Naruto to the floor where he tried to get up. A few minutes later, Rob went back inside and tried to ease the numbness from Naruto's body. While the others watched in concern, Sho walked over to his older brother and stood there. Sho leaned in as much as possible. "I'm sorry, Ni-san. This is my fault." He raised his head again and showed his teary eyes. Naruto didn't even look at him. "If you hadn't lost focus, you wouldn't have hurt yourself. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His tears streamed non-stop onto her injured feet. The others watched, understanding what had happened. The thought of running away now held no hope if his best hope was hurt. Sho had been crying for a while until he felt a heavy hand on his head. He looked up through tears as he saw his older brother's hand on his head. "Shut up, Sho. I'm sick of this," he said, no sympathy in her voice for his actions. Sho felt his tears rise even more at Naruto's implied words. Naruto raised his head and showed determined eyes. "I'm sick of being made to cry." Sho stopped his tears and watched as he stood up, staggering a bit in pain. "Every day these people hurt us and we take it. Ignore it like we're not even human. And all we do is cry, hoping our tears can wash away the pain." As Naruto said this, he gritted his teeth and fists in anger, shaking slightly. And then he remembered what it had felt like when he passed out moments ago. "We will go through a lot of pain and trials in our lives. Hell, we've been through a lot already. And you'll want to cry when you do, but don't. This will only prove to them that they are winning, that they have broken us. Take that pain and carry it with you, through the problems you go through. We'll find a way out of this place, and when we do." Naruto smiled slightly as he finally remembered those long-forgotten words. "When we are free, when we can get out of this place and see the world with our own eyes, then we cry." He looked at the little boy who was looking at him with dry eyes. "So save those tears until we see a free world. Because trust me, you'll feel so good you won't be able to help but cry. Well?" she concluded with a happy smile. The others looked at the two in great surprise. Sho felt his eyes bulge slightly, but he stiffened and wiped his eyes. He looked at Naruto and copied his smile. "Well?" Naruto smiled as he heard people walking towards him. He turned to see everyone imitating his smile. Elsa reached out and clung to him. "Don't try it, it's fine. We won't cry again if you don't take care of this, okay?" She nodded as her legs almost instantly turned to jelly and she tripped Erza as she was forced to carry her weight. Elsa leaned Naruto against the wall to catch her breath and sat next to him. She looked at him to see that she was watching others cheer right there. "I didn't know you could be so smart." "I can't." It was Kurama who said it. "He was very smart when he wasn't insulting me," he said with a smile. Jellal joined the two as the others began playing again. They all sat there silently watching them. Naruto felt a growing sensation in his chest and expressed his concern. "I think we should run away." They both looked at each other briefly in surprise before sitting back down and watching. "Are you sure?" "We can't stay here. We have to go. We can't tell Rob Ji-chan, but we'll send help here when we're out. We can stop this if we take the risk." Naruto took a deep breath and looked at Jellal, who didn't look back. "You know when the ships arrive, right?" Jellal nodded. "Yes, I'm engaged. If we accept this, it must be within the next week. After that, it will happen again in 2 months." Erza looked at them. "We can do it?" she asked with a strong note of concern in her voice. "I know we can do it. And I'm confident we can watch each other's backs." Naruto lifted his head and smiled. "We're the best, aren't we?" Everyone smiled at his reference to their challenge from years ago. They had decided it would soon be time to go. That they would never stay here again. By next week they would be free. To be continued.
That's it for this part, guys. Thanks for listening to this video. I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, like and subscribe for more. And thank you all for your help and support, and have a great day.